Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge Podcast. My name's Josh. Thanks for joining me today. I've got a very special guest. Dr. Leslie Dobson from California has come on the show. I've been following her for a little while. She covers similar stuff that I cover, the exploitation of children, and she works with some of the creepiest people in the world and has so much experience. So we had a great conversation today about what she does and how it affects family vloggers and something that they should be listening to. She's pretty passionate about it. She's a pretty cool gal too. So stick around for the interview. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge Podcast. My name's Josh. Thanks for joining me. I have a very, very special guest with me now, Dr. Leslie Dobson. And she's from California. And I've been following her for a long time. We touch on some of the same topics. She gets into a whole wide array of things when it comes to what she covers, and we're going to get into that today. But I have a specific thing I want to talk to her about today, and that's the people that she's come in contact with, the people that she has worked with, and how that relates to family vlogging, and why people who do this should take a second look at it and understand who's actually watching it. So, Dr. Leslie, thanks for coming on. Can I call you Leslie, or should I call you Dr. Leslie?
Oh, Leslie's fine. Doctor's for the criminals.
Okay, good. That's what I'll do. Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into this position, and what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist in California. My first real experience, unpaid experience in my doctorate program was in the Los Angeles County Jail. And they didn't have a program. And I said, that's the hardest place to work. I want to work there. We're going to start a program. And everybody said I was an idiot and I couldn't do it. And of course, that made me want to do it more. So I trained there, and they call it the monkey pen. It is the most insane setting I've ever seen.
How do the guys that get into that, how do they get in there? Like, are these like the worst criminals? Are they like mid-level? Like, who are the people that you're seeing, and why do you need to be there? Yeah.
So you've got Gen Pop, just anyone arrested goes in. But if they start to exhibit mental health symptoms, then they go to the Twin Towers. And then the higher up they are, the higher the floor, the more severe their illness is. So immediately I got stationed on the top floor, floor 7. So we have floridly psychotic individuals who just committed heinous crimes. A lot of them are still bloodied. They're not even prepped yet. And they're actively psychotic, so they're not medicated. And I walk in as part of the treatment team to figure out, okay, what is going on with this person, and how do we get them well? How do we ground them? How do we make them better? But initially, it's flaccid penises, it's apples being thrown at your head, pee and poo being thrown at your head. I mean, things that I have been called that I didn't even know you could put together in a sentence. I was quite proud at the same time.
So you're in the same room with these heinous criminals. There's not like a piece of glass between you. You're literally sitting at a table with these guys, and you're not like, obviously you have protection, but you're not scared at all.
Well, so ideally, the officers are controlling the doors from a central pod. And, ideally they're paying attention. They may be on YouTube watching you and other people and not paying attention. Which is often the case. I remember many times where I would come out of one elevator and an inmate would be standing there and nobody would open the door and we would just be stuck there. But then they go into their cells. They have pods of cells, and then they're locked into their cells. When they come to meet with me, we just sit at a table across from each other, and there's usually one officer on the floor around. But shit goes down. Your attention's not going to be on one person or the clinician.
I want to come back to that, but before we get to that, how did you get into this world then? Like when you were studying in school and stuff, like what made you say, I want to work with the creepiest, craziest weirdos on the planet Earth? Like, how'd you put, like, I wouldn't want that for my daughter. Like, how did you put that? How did that work?
I always felt like the black sheep growing up. Like, I always felt like I could tell when adults were sweeping shit under the rug, and it bugged the hell out of me. And it started to really interest me that people could not grasp the severity of mental health, serious conversations. Like, most people are so blissfully ignorant. And it really drove me to want to look at the darker side of the world. And then what I learned is I could hang with these guys. I could hear their stories. I could tolerate it. I didn't have nightmares. And I could actually help the ones that were willing to move forward. And I could incarcerate the ones that weren't going to respond to treatment.
Yeah. And so then your end game is obviously to take the worst, craziest, and try to actually turn them, give them a treatment plan that's going to help because in the end, you honestly believe that some of these guys are worth saving. Some of them are not, though, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you went to school, you did all this stuff. You said you're going to do that because you grew up with this kind of innate gut type of thing. Like, you kind of knew when people were bullshitting or when somebody was lying. Like, I think discernment is probably a really good word we can use. So I would never ever do what you do. I could never look, even though I've seen some crazy stuff in my life. And I'm going to ask you a couple stories soon, but you're sitting in front of a criminal who has done heinous things, and they'll tell you about it. Is that what, like, you want to know what they've done, you want to know why they've done it, and then you come up with a plan?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the assessment measures we use, the more you tell me, the more I can score you, the more I can understand you. So if I'm really interested and maybe attractive and I smell good and you want to charm me, then maybe you'll tell me a little bit more, right? Wow. Yeah. Maybe you'll be a little more charming yourself. You'll start to add all of those kind of psychopathic traits into the conversation, and then eventually lose track of the lies. And there's a lot of truths in the presentation that comes out. You're
playing 4D chess because you're walking in there knowing you smell like $1 million, you're attractive, you get your hair done, you look apart. Do you think that what you do uniquely is different than, like, let's say a dude that walks in there that is the same way? Like, you have a distinct advantage because probably all the people you worked with are men?
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. Okay. My husband is a male forensic psychologist, and we both got asked to talk at a university about our jobs. And so we talked about our jobs, and the feedback we got was that people thought his job was so cool, they would all want his job, but nobody would want mine. We worked at the same place.
So how did they come to that conclusion? How did that work?
Because I, as a woman, feel so much more threatened, and I am treated so different than the men in the institution. Yeah. And it scared the students. Okay,
and I understand that, but you also have a distinct advantage because you can disarm people. That you're not as much of a threat as a male might be, and you're obviously in there. But that's crazy that you can use charm to actually get in and find out a story. That's actually brilliant. I think that's brilliant of you to do that. That's really cool. That's why I've been following you, and I love your, like, no bullshit. Like, let's talk about what's going on. And it's like, is as heinous sometimes as it is, you're just like, let's do this. And that's it's unique because you don't look like you would do that. Does that make sense? Like, you don't look like the type of person that's like, all right, here's the goods, and you're about to barf in this barf bag. So give me a story. Like, if you're allowed to, I know as Dr. Privilege, whatever you call that. I know you're not allowed to say much, but are you allowed anything? You're allowed to some stories. And the reason I'm asking these is not to be salacious, but to say I'm trying to get people to understand the people that you worked with.
I think overall people don't understand how humans are warehoused in this world. So we, especially in America, we warehouse individuals who have violent felonies and severe mental illness, and they're not responding to treatment. I think especially, everyone should look it up, but Coalinga State Hospital is where we warehouse in California violent sexual offenders. And they are not criminals. They are patients. Mm-hmm. So they are civilly committed, and they will never get out. And these guys, they have websites. They've put my social security up. I mean, they have access to all the experts that come against them. They try and make us all look like we're not credible. And these are some of the most heinous, disgusting crimes that I've ever heard in my entire life. I mean, things where feces has to be in certain areas in order for someone to orgasm. I mean, there's cannibalism, there's necrophilia, it's unimaginable.
Mm-hmm. And you've dealt with all walks of that. And so, and you say none of it kind of lives in your head rent free. I'm like, to a degree it does, but you say none of it makes you like regret what you do. It's just you have a disposition to be like, okay, there's something wrong or right about you that allows you to be able to do that. Like, I think a lot of maybe detectives who work in high crime areas, a lot of murder. One of my co-hosts on my dad podcast, Jeff, he has seen people's like heads, because he's a firefighter that works in Toronto, which is like one of the busiest cities in Canada. And like, he has seen things. And he's just like, it's just the way it is. I mean, also you understand, because you are a person that deals with psychology. And so you understand yourself, the depths of what you need to do for your own self psychology care. Is that true? Like, do you see a psychologist?
Oh yeah, I have two.
Okay. Well, there you go.
I have one that can tolerate certain parts of my stories and one that can't.
Okay.
So it's all about finding also who can help you in the right way.
Because is the process you have to unload it eventually to somebody?
Well, and it's, they get that vicarious trauma, but I also unload it because I want to make sure I did my job okay.
Right.
If I'm analyzing somebody or if I'm testing somebody and I'm determining that they're not fit to be released, the judge usually sides with me, and that's a big onus on me. Yeah. So I need a lot of colleagues to bounce it off with, and we can joke and we can laugh about serious things because that's kind of how we cope.
I think humans cope in general like that. I think some people might find that sick, but I think every human to some degree needs something, because either you're going to cope by breaking down and having a mental breakdown or a panic attack or something, or you can just laugh it off, which I think is the better way, the rainbow way. That's the better way. Okay, so the reason I brought you on is because obviously that you work in these places, and I've heard you talk about this with Annie and other people, and we love Annie over here. She's one of my faves. But I cover obviously the exploitation of children, not exclusively, but it's one of the main things I do on my channel. I absolutely hate it. But we rarely get into the dangers of it. Like I talk about it a lot, especially with the emergence of artificial intelligence and how scary that is and how easy, like today I'm in a Dolly prompt session in Facebook, and you can prompt it to say anything you want. Like literally, is there something on me? Sorry. You can prompt it to say anything that you want. Okay. And what the emergence of AI has made it so scary for these kids who are on the internet, because these men, there's two ways you can do this. Okay. So you can get the predators who are turning it into the CSAM that they want, right? And sell it or use it for their own nefarious purposes and disgusting purposes. Or they can use it to blackmail these kids on the internet, which I think is happening full force too. I think if you see someone like Doherty Dozen, she said that James was blackmailed. Someone said they have a picture of him, or even if it's not, even if it's artificially created, you could say, I'm going to release this unless you give me money. And I'm sure that happens. I'm sure that there are teenagers who are targeted by other adult or older teenagers who get into false relationships with some of these kids. And then they get what they want, and then they use it to blackmail. We'll never hear about it because they obviously want to pay that to protect their own image. But the other side of this is the parasocial relationships that are developed, not only with just normies or people who are, I don't know why you'd follow strange children on the internet, but they are those people and they exist. Yeah. And then there's predators. And a while back, I did an expose where I paid exorbitant amounts of money to buy really high level analytics from a place called Social Book, and they didn't like that I did this. But what it did was show you the engagement analytics on a certain channel, not who's subscribed, who is watching, because that's what someone's going to pay you $10,000. They want to know the truth about who's watching, not what you're going to feed them, right? Who's actually watching this, and you pay this company to do it. Anyway, Everly LeBrant was this 7-year-old who was a dancer, and her parents are social media superstars. They have 12 million subscribers. They're terrible people. Okay, they're terrible. But she had 70% adult males over the age of 24 watching her. In all of her pictures were her dancing in leotards, every single one. And there's absolutely no reason that any adult male at all should be watching, even if, let's say, 10% of them were a child using their dad's Instagram account to watch it. And I don't think it's much more than that. So they do attract it. And so these people that are in these institutions with you, you say that this is how they get it? Can you tell me a little bit more about your experience and how they get what they want? I
mean, even in the institutions, they're getting it. So here's an example of one of the worst cases I saw in an institution. The guys were allowed to have newspapers. They could read the newspapers in the day room, but they weren't allowed to take them back to their room or anything. And what the pedophiles would often do is try to steal the newspapers and try to find the images of the children, of a face, of anything childlike, shoes. It could be a symbol of anything, right? Mm-hmm. And they would hide them in their pockets or their pants. And then they would rub them on their penises and masturbate. And they would act out the voices of the children, like as they were being pleasured, not the man being pleasured, but that the children were liking it and being pleasured in this orgy.
Holy crap. And that's something they get their hands on. Now, are there prisons and places that they can just watch the stuff?
Yes. So this is a lock, like that was a lockdown facility. Now imagine if they have access to colored photos. Imagine if somebody is not a pedophile, like a bunkie gets a picture of their own kid. Okay, so now we've got even more enticing content. Imagine if they're watching television or they have access to the law library, books, or a computer, right? So they start to build these infatuations, and it concretizes their belief that they are sexually aroused by children. And then what happens when they get out? Who cares if you have an ankle monitor? Who cares if you're being followed? You're going to get a kid. Yep. And how are you going to get the kid first? Well, you're going to go online. You're going to track the kid. You're going to see where the kid goes to school. You're going to look at the social media. I mean, A for Adley is one of those shows on YouTube where I know exactly where this child lives, where she shops, what she looks like, what her dad does. I mean, they've given her life away online. So if a predator then starts to hone in on her, he's not going to be as satisfied by masturbating to her. He's going to go get her.
That's the scariest part about this, because I did a video about Jess Femme. She's another California native who we know exactly where she lives. We know her kids go to school. We know their allergies. We know when they went through puberty. We know literally everything about them, their first boyfriend, girlfriend. We know their favorite video games. We know everything about these children. Like, I mean, their favorite foods down to where they're going to be at a dance competition or where they do, what circuit they're in. It's insanity to me. And these guys, to me, and I hope you correct if I'm wrong, but that's an easy target.
Yeah.
And we're just waiting for the moment that actually does happen, because, okay, so they also can develop a relationship with them parasocially, because they have content with these kids out every day, and they might think that they're, especially when the family vlogger's up there, be like, you're part of our family. Thanks for joining. Come on into our family and see how we live. You're part of it. These people are sick in the head. Am I right that they are going to start believing that?
Well, I mean, if you go on A for Adley's Instagram and you message her, you get a message back from her, a video from her saying, thank you so much for messaging me. Like, it feels to somebody who's.
Is it A for Adlin? A for Adlin?
A for Adley. Adley.
A for Adley. I think I'm blocked. I'm blocked. Oh. It's her dad that's doing it.
It's her dad that's doing
it. Little redhead girl. Okay. Yeah, that's super creepy. And
you get a private message back from her. So, you know, I've only been doing this social media stuff for about a year, and the amount of men who have offered to pay me for pictures is astounding. And I cannot even imagine for the accounts that are actually taking this up. I mean, they're making millions by sending out used clothing of their children to these individuals.
There's a court case. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Finish.
Oh, I was just say they're giving away their addresses. They're giving away their ability to keep their children safe. And
there's a case, Piper Raquel, and her mom's name is Tiffany Smith, and they're going to court right now to be sued for SA and a bunch of other things. They didn't pay these kids what they were worth. And one of the children admitted that they were on their way to the post office with this Tiffany mom, who's the head of this channel. She's basically just tons of kids in this, just rolls them in and rolls them out. There's drama. The parents hate each other. She makes millions upon millions of dollars. A lot of people don't realize that these family channels make millions, okay? And that's why it's so enticing to do it, and that's why they ignore the dangers. But they were on their way to a mailbox, and the kid was asking what was going on. She's like, oh, I mail Piper's bra and underwear, used bra and underwear to these men. And the kid was like, why? She's like, because they like to sniff them or something. She said something like that to the degree, but she allegedly sells these things to predators on the internet. Like, come on. Like, I mean, I don't care what kind of kinks you have. What kind of parent does that? And to a lesser degree, what kind of parent exposes their children to the internet for, like, I can understand why people do it, right? Millions of dollars, that's very enticing to so many people. Okay, I understand why. I get it. And a lot of them can maybe justify by saying, well, I'll keep my kids safe, but you can't really. And that's only one side of it. The predator side that you're talking about is what scares me. So can you elaborate a little bit more on what you think that these guys are taking, how it can work, and what they're actually looking at? Because these family channels, they need to hear it from a professional, not a professional asshole, which is what I generally sometimes to these people.
The more images, the more accessibility, the easier, right? So they're taking videos and images to the dark web. They're using encrypted sites to share them. They have brotherhoods where they pass them around. And then again, they're using AI to distort them. I mean, we have so many cases where we have real images of real adult men penetrating 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and other men are watching that to get off. Well, if they can't get that right away, they can make that through AI. Until they can get it right away, then they're going to film it, and then that's what they're selling. So what we're doing is breeding this distorted view, this mental illness. We're saying, hey, look at I think that the account Ren that has been all over the news, but look at my little girl almost, eating things that look like erect penises. So now we're taking, like, let's say we have a low IQ pedophile and he's not very imaginative. Well, now he doesn't need to be. Now he just can right away slot his penis right in there, envision it, masturbate, get off, and start looking for it again.
And these, like, there's no way that these people like Ren, like, we'll talk about Ren for a little bit, and some stuff's been going on. It looks like her channel is back, but she keeps deleting it. She goes down for a couple of days, she comes up, but I don't see anything right now. But yeah, that's the one thing. There's no way that you just admitted that you've been on the internet for a year and you've been solicited or sent whatever, probably dick pics and asked for nudes a million times, right? You've already.
Yeah.
Okay. I am a dude and it happens to me, but very rarely. Okay. And even that, when it does happen, I'm flabbergasted. So I can't even imagine being a woman on this internet. Okay. I can't even imagine it. That's why my kid is never going to be on social media, ever. Okay. Ever. Not until she's an adult, if she wants to. But imagine Ren or an Ellen or a Jacqueline, whatever her name is, herself probably gets these types of these things. And then the solicitation for her daughter too. That there's zero chance she hasn't gotten any. Even if this happened once, that to me would be like, I'm done on the internet with my child. That's the problem. That's the disparagement here, where they say, okay, I'm making millions, and the justification is, okay, well, it's just that they exist and I can't do anything about that. And they justify by saying, well, I'm going to take my kid to the park. Maybe there's pedophiles at the park. Yes, but you're with your child at the park and you can protect them. You cannot protect what you can't see, and that's the big thing. But you touched on something there. I'm going to bring it back. And this has been a debate amongst a lot of people. And I often think about this, these predators. I don't know if they're genetically disposed to being predator or to being pedophile. I don't know if that's a genetic thing or if it's a mental. It's obviously they seem to say they can't help themselves, right? They say this is how I am, and that's just the way it is. There's a movement to make it more acceptable with the moniker of MAP and all this kind of stuff. That's a side thing. But is there something justifiable in making sex dolls of children or of doing AI and letting it happen because there is no real victims? What do you say on that?
No way. Okay. No. I mean, how do we form habits? We do things. Yes. We like it. We do it more. We like it more. Even if you think about healthy sexuality, like, was an orgasm extra good because you had to pee? I mean, you think about just normal human stuff. The same stuff happens in pedophiles, right? They're still humans. They have the drive of a grown male, but they have the emotional capacity and usually a lower IQ that links them into this relationship with a child. Okay. So they feel this love, almost this false sense of love, but then they have to apply this adult sexuality to it. And I don't think a lot of them can be helped. I mean, I've had clients who have blown their own penises off and they still go after kids. And it's not about entirely the sexual part, right? It's about that emotional, psychological piece. And the best way is through consequences. They can't be around kids. They need to be locked up. They need to be watched. Even after years of working with many who I had even like a glimpse of hope with, I would ask them for their discharge plan, and they would say they wanted to start a preschool. They wanted to move somewhere that was next to an elementary school. I mean, it was just, they could not get away from the idea that those are their people, children.
And then allowing this to happen, like, without, again, I say that victimless. It's not victimless, because they're always going to be pulling, especially AI is pulling it from some kind of area. They're pulling it from images of kids anyway. It's not victimless, but what you're saying is that they're, especially because of the nature of the predatory behavior, they are not going to get enough of that. That's not going to be good enough. It's always going to escalate. We do the same thing, but we do it differently. Some people have the intrinsically morals, and they say, well, they keep it private, but I hear what you're saying. I've never heard it said that way. And something else that you said really rich is that they have these tribes, what did you call it? What do you call it?
Brotherhoods.
The brotherhoods, which is absolutely crazy. I uncovered way back early in my channel too, this, I called it, the Predator playlist. So they would gather playlists of kids in diapers and bathing suits, time-stamped them, because you used to be able to, they took this ability away, then they brought it back, which is crazy to me, because they recognized there was a problem on kids' channels and videos with kids in it, that these guys were tagging the moment, and then they would link that in their Predator playlists, right? And the YouTube said, hey, we see that this is a problem. We're taking the ability to comment away from kids. And then they brought it back. So they admitted it was happening, and then they brought it back, which to me is bananas. And as soon as a family channel or a family vlogger or someone who uses kids in their content sees one instance or gets one DM of somebody being creepy towards their children, that's it. I don't think it should ever happen to begin with. But why? Maybe because you know more about humans and behavior than I will ever know. But what causes these parents to ignore the absolute, like, the people that you're talking about, they exist, and those are the people consuming this content? What stops these parents from, like, saying, okay, what the heck, I got to stop this? How can they continue? It's
dumbfounding to me. And I have to say, several influencers have reached out to me since I started social media, and they said they're taking their kids off the internet. And that was wonderful to hear. But for the most part, people are not. And it's this ignorance of, I can keep myself and my kids safe. But we have to look at it in two ways. One, you can't always keep your child safe, like you said. And two, you're hurting other kids by letting this happen. So if they can't access your kid, then they're still sexually stimulated and have a desire to find another kid.
And the stuff that they serve up on silver platters to these predators, like, I'm trying to stress this so you can stress it, is like, these people need to understand that when you show your kid's mouth at the dentist, when you show their period, because these guys have obviously clearly weird kinks. I mean, I imagine you've seen some crazy stuff. In the regular thing that you think is regular, like a girl, Weiss Life, they're from California too, like measuring their daughter's chest and taking them bra shopping, a 12-year-old. Like, the things that we find innocuous, that they're like, oh, we're helping people. Predators find that the most, right? They find that the most enticing. Just the regular shit that we think is normal. They are like, no, I want it. So I'm trying to I'm trying to get, like, I don't know how I'm supposed to explain this to people, but like, it's that stuff that is the most enticing, not just a picture of your kid running by, or they're at a baseball game or something. That's not it. When you're showing your kids' lives day by day, 24 hours, you're not only opening them up to being victimized, but you're also allowing these people to take that content. And how can you feel like you're a parent that protects your child when you know chomos are doing what they're doing to your content? Yeah, I think of and I'm actually trying to write a screenplay that can show this, but I think about the movie Twilight with the vampires, and those scenes when she's a vampire, or she's kind of daydreaming, and it's all sparkly, and they're up on the hill, and the music's all beautiful, and it's just them. No one else exists in the world, right? It's this gorgeous, lovely scene. And that's how a pedophile sees a child in a crowd, in traffic, in groups, in school, with their parents, screaming, getting injured, right? They have this rose-colored infatuation of this just all-encompassing love and adornment for this child. And then they want to teach this child
proper sex. They want to teach this child how to enter the world. Let me equip them with everything I can as a man so that they don't get to feel the pain that I felt, so that they don't see the world that I see.
Yeah, so a lot of them are looking at it from an empathetic view. They're saying, I'm doing good by doing this. And so, okay, and I think that's going to be new to a lot of people, because I think a lot of influencers who do this just think it's just some disgusting, gross guy in his trailer texting. He doesn't shave. He's not going to be, and it's a predator who's like angry at it and wants it, but it's not. It's generally a person who thinks that they're doing good, and that's more scary, actually.
Yes.
Oh, damn! Whenever I have conversations about this type of stuff, it never makes me feel better. It never like, okay, we're more educated. It makes me more scared. And the fact that these families don't give a shit, or they do, or again, look past it to the money. Again, when we were waiting for it to happen, there was a case in Florida. Her name was Ava Madry. She was a 15-year-old TikToker. I don't know if you heard the story. Her parents let her do it, and she was obviously, young and dancing and dressing the way teenagers dress. And there was a 19-year-old boy, and her dad allowed her to sell pictures to this kid, not nudes or anything, but like just extra content. Like, you're an extra fan. And this is what parents do anyway to even younger kids. They have like paid subscription pages where you can go and like get, they should be in jail. But this guy had such an infatuation with her. He showed up at her house eventually and was mad because she ghosted him, blew the front door off with a shotgun, went into the house to kill the family, and then his gun jammed. He ran away, came back. Her dad happens to be an ex-New York police officer, shot him and killed him. Okay? His gun doesn't jam, that family's dead, right? Or some of them are before the dad can react, right? This is the reality, and and I say this a lot because I am trying to scare the shit out of family vloggers. We're just waiting for the moment someone like Everly LeBrant or one of the Doherty Dozen kids or whatever is taken. We're waiting for it before anything can change, and that's the scariest thing in the world. And these families because we always wait for a precedent to be set before big changes are made. And one of these families, the precedent's going to be set with them. And that's the scariest thing in the world. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, because these kids are innocent. They don't deserve that. They don't see the danger, which is another reason why they can't give informed consent to what they're doing, because they don't see that danger. And a parent can express that danger to them because they wouldn't.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is, you do not need to engage with a sick person who has an erotomanic delusional disorder and is a pedophile. It does not matter if you engage or not. They are building a story around you, and they are building their life about you. So the more you put your child out there, the more they are building and incorporating the characteristics, the giggle, the smell, the nuanced grin, how your child's hair looks in the morning, how puffy their eyes are first thing in the morning, and they just had a good sleep. All of that shit is being incorporated into this fantasy of the pedophile needing to care for your child and eventually take your child from you because they can do a better job.
And that's what these people fail to realize, or fail to understand what's been going on. Because what you're saying there, it's you understand these people, you work with them. I think if anybody has a place to speak on this, it's you or them. And you even say, like, I'm going to go back to the time you said someone blew their wiener off because they feel guilt about some of them obviously feel guilt about who they are and know they can't change it. So they try to change it by unaliving themselves or doing something like this. Now, are there some who will speak out and say, this is how we act? Like, are there people out there trying to help be like, this is the MO of what we do. You need to stop doing this.
Yeah, I think there are. And most of them are ones that, haven't actually had physical victims yet. But I mean, I've had plenty of therapy sessions, preventing them from actually getting to the victim. And I've really honed in on that shame that they're feeling and that misunderstood nature where they only feel understood by the child. And so trying to fill that with a more appropriate relationship before it goes too far. And a lot of people often will start with anime, or, they kind of know they're on the edge of not normal cartoons, not entirely normal games. And they start to worry, my friends aren't like this. I'm getting more into this. That's when you need to see a professional.
why is anime the thing? And I don't know a lot about anime, but I'm seeing what you're saying there is why is anime a gateway into that?
Well, I mean, it's sexy, right? I mean, it's very fantasy driven, and one of the biggest fetishes I've seen with sex offenders are small Asian women. Mm-hmm. And it's that kind of that control, that ability to just kind of take over a very small, innocent looking woman. I mean, there's such an industry in Asian porn in America.
That's cool. The things that live in your brain, I'm glad they don't live in my brain, but that's like, you have to know all this stuff. And that's the craziest thing. So if you had an opportunity to sit in front of, because I mean, again, I literally just roast these people who do it. And it might not be as effective as everybody says, but you are more effective. And there are people like Mom Uncharted that are really effective in this stuff. But if you have an opportunity to stand in front of these people, let's say a TED Talk where they're all sitting in front of you, like, what do you tell these people? Do you scare the shit out of them, or do you take a different approach and say, here's what it is? What would you say to them?
I think I would really try to scare the shit out of them. And I would tell them, I would tell them the stories of the 2-year-olds that I have found not alive with their orifices ripped open. I would tell them where the DNA was found. Yeah. I would tell them that the family never thought they would be a victim, that the family the day before went to Disneyland and everything was fine and they ordered pizza and the next morning the child is torn up from the inside out. Like, I would tell them the stories of, we don't think it's going to happen to us. Neither mm-hmm. did they.
Mm-hmm. That's it. It's always like, oh, it's happening to other people. And again, when it happens to a high profile child, that's when the laws will change. And if you had your way, if you were a dictator in the US and you had your way, would you ever allow children on the internet or like to be exposed to public at any degree?
No. And I like Canada's bill. I like the censoring of the internet, but it draws that political line of what is too much. Like, mm-hmm. how much onus do we put on the parents? Because clearly most parents are really fucking this up and keeping the children online. So does the government need to become involved? How can we keep parents in check without the government completely taking over our rights? And it's a really hard conversation to have. And I think America's about to start having that conversation more and more.
Yeah, the government wouldn't have to step in if parents just did their job, and that's why CPS and CAS and parenting. There is an arm that exists because parents sometimes can't be trusted with what they're doing, and that's whose fault is like. So if the parent can't protect the child and they won't and they refuse to, I think another answer is, okay, fine. Then social media should be held account to some degree too, and say, like, because they could shut it off instantly. They could say, you know what, no more kids on our platform under the age of 13. Not even the image of them. I understand them saying we don't want kids creating accounts. They do, but I can understand them saying it, right? But they could instantly tomorrow change the direction of how this goes. But it's worth hundreds of billions of dollars, which is why they won't touch it. Money talks and bullshit walks every single time.
I mean, with the technology and the AI capacity, we could wipe Ren's account offline in 1 second. I mean, you could easily code something with a phallic image and an underage face and wipe it off social media, but they're not doing it.
But they'll sit in front of Congress and be like, we do everything we can. We have a team of 6 people amongst the staff of 50,000 sitting here taking in 50,000 complaints a day. Like, they don't take it seriously. They could change it. Now, again, the reason why I say I'm not for censorship and I'm not for control of the government, I'm like a libertarian. I'm like, less government as much as we possibly can. Okay, I understand that. But sometimes, sorry, you're not going to protect your kids. Someone needs to. And that's just the reality of this, because kids cannot protect themselves. That's just the long and short of it. There's no other way to put it. So in this instance, if you're refusing to protect your kids and you know the dangers, and you know what? Here's the thing that really pisses me off. A lot of these, I'd say almost all of them, depending on the size of their channels, have probably crazy, weird horror stories or DMs and messages we'll never know about, because if they even told anybody about them, they'd be canceled. Because you'd be like, you got that message and you kept your kid on the internet? That's the craziest thing.
100%. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? If it looks fishy, it is fishy, right?
Yep.
These kids are being used, they're being trafficked, their pictures are being used to perpetuate child porn, and we're not stopping it. How many people can do machine learning and coding? I mean, it would take one day to change the algorithms on all these platforms and take down the content.
Yeah. The thing is it's just not like regular porn, which freedom of speech, I get it stuff. Consenting adults doing what they're going to do. And we can have an argument all day about how deep that goes. But these are children. It's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. It's just there's not somebody out there except for the people who are benefiting from it or ingesting the content that would have a problem with it. There's just, if you have a problem with it, it's because you ingest it or you make money on it. Most humans, most good parents, if you got to ask them honestly, if you knew somebody was doing this content with your children and you had it on the internet, would you take it down? Most of them would say, yeah, of course I would. These people outwardly are saying, I don't give a shit about my kid. That's what I'm hearing.
They're saying it's not close enough to home yet to bother me. They're saying I don't. Yeah, I look at the other countries, I look at war, I look at death, and that's nice. I don't care. It's not touching me yet.
Yeah, until it does, and that's what we're waiting for. All right, Dr. Leslie, this has been an amazing conversation, although now I'm going to be ill for the rest of the things that oh my gosh, I'm so... Thank God people like you exist, though, that you are, and you have a heart that you do, and when you want to affect change, especially in those who do these. I mean, I know that the success rate is probably minuscule, but at least you're trying. But you also have a wealth of knowledge that can be shared, even though these guys are going to be instituted for the rest of their life. You're willing to share that, and I really appreciate it about you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just happy people are willing to hear it, and if it means that they can hear it because I'm not like a burly man, then fine, I'll tell it from being a young female.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to what's the future for your content? Because I love that you have this angle where you can take something and talk about it from a professional standpoint. What's your future? What are you looking at doing?
I'm going to start a video podcast. It's going to be called Intentionally Disturbing. And so
it's fitting.
The plan is to have pretty deep conversations with people who have done either heinous things or been a part of stopping heinous things, and really talk about the impact on their mind and how they saw it and how they perceived it.
I think that's gonna be very valuable to us as a whole, like people who are interested in that stuff, because again, knowing the dangers is half the battle. Like, I know I'm quoting G.I. Joe here, but knowing is half the battle here. And the thing is that when you know and you make changes, that makes you a person that's like, okay, I didn't know, I know now, I'm changing. These people who know and don't change, that's even scarier, I'm sorry. Because then they don't have a leg to stand on when some shit hits the fan and something really happens. What are they going to say? I didn't know. You knew every single step of the way. What are you going to do when that happens? And I hope it doesn't, but we know humans exist, bad people exist, evil exists. It's going to happen. So.
And maybe once this podcast gets going, like maybe Ren's mother, Jacqueline, would like to sit down and talk to me. I mean, if you're that innocent, why would you worry? Right? Exactly. I'm not going to come at you. I just want to hear your story. And if anyone says no to that, then we have some answers. You
can't debate this. I've had many people try to debate it or give me an excuse. Like it's like one of those. It's like just one of those stances. I'm sorry. There is no rebuttal to, is the exploitation of children? Is there any nuance to it? No. There's no way you can. There's no informed consent. It's not possible with children. It doesn't exist at all. Okay, there's the giving away the private information. There's no way to justify that. All the things that they show, the predators, the parasocial relationships that exist outside your control. There's just no way to justify it. They can't. They've tried. They can't. It doesn't. They will try though. Oh, you only see 15 seconds of my life. Oh, you only see this, and you're making this up. Well, what you show these predators is what matters. Who cares about the weirdo normies who are just? Which is weird to me anyway. I don't know why people want to watch strange children on the internet. I don't know why it's so lucrative, but it's this. And it's not a small population, right? It's not a tiny population of the U.S. 350 million, 330 million people in the U.S. What is a population of these types of predators? Like
huge.
Millions.
I mean, it's largely not in America. We have a huge problem in America, and it's way worse in other countries.
Yeah, because they have.
But I wanted to mention like the letter that Jacqueline's attorney or someone sent me.
Oh, yeah.
Like the informal, I don't know what the letter was, but one of the lines in that letter was, the posts aren't intended to be sexual. You're making them sexual. And that is kind of I mean, that's just the summary of what you and I have been talking about, is that if you're going to make it so obviously sexual, it's going to take one moment for a pedophile to engage in that, right? If you're making it so easy for them, it's not entire, like, it's not on us. We're not making up this perspective. You're handing it to them on a silver platter. Yeah. So if you want to show your kid, then do it in a way where your kid is standing next to an adult, your kid is fully dressed, and it's very few and far between that she is shown online.
It's a guilt deflection. They're deflecting it on people to be like, you should be ashamed that you think it's this way. But in the end, if these millions of people who out here who don't think like that think it's happening, then it's, of course, the predator is going to be like, yeah, this is what I want. So they do that a lot. They want to guilt you into feeling, oh, maybe I shouldn't be thinking that way. No. When you see something, again, it's Occam's razor. It's just the most. If you see it and you think it, then the predators are going to think it 10 times or 100-fold more than you do. Yeah. And she is doing her kid shaving her thing with a razor because she's like, show mom putting a tampon in. I'm sorry. That video alone should have got her canceled off the internet. Just that one video. And there's been 1,000 since then. So she knows what she's doing, because as soon as the algorithm picks up something like, let's take, for example, a family vlogger who's just doing normal stuff. All of a sudden, one day they get a big giant boost in the video. Well, let's see what happened. It's because and this is generally often how it works. It's because they got their kid's mouth wide open at the dentist chair in the thumbnail, and they're like, "What did I get that?" And then you see this pattern. It's crazy. You go through a family blogger's timeline and watch the videos with the most views. Something happened, which is generally like that, or the hospital visit, or period, or dentist. It's a mouth or something inappropriate, right? Or bathing suit. They see this big boost. Watch about 5 videos down. When you see the videos go down, and then watch that. Another one pops up, then another one, then the hospital here, dentist. They found that makes them the most money. Maybe they're aloof and they're like, well, I don't know why, but they replicate that, which makes them the most money. And the thing that makes them the most money always on every family vlogger channel is something inappropriate like that. It's never like, we went to Burger King. It's never something like that. It's always 99% about something inappropriate. But anyway, sorry, we got off on a tangent at the end there. But
yeah, I just want to close with saying, like, everything you're saying is valid, and I have talked to pedophiles and sex offenders who say the same thing. Like, they look at the content and they find it easily sexualized. I mean, the threat is real.
Yeah, and I need people to understand that you have talked to the source of these dudes, and they have told you this with their words, and that's what we should be listening. If you don't want to listen to me, I understand that. I get it. But listen to Dr. Leslie here. You're hearing it from them who's saying that's where I get it. And if even to some degree, I think even some of them, if they were told by the predator that I'm using it for this, they still wouldn't care. That's what scares the shit out of me the most. So
yeah.
Well, that's sad. There's no good part about this, but I'm glad we had this conversation, because it's really, really important, and hopefully something good. Yeah. Maybe a couple more. And I've, just like you, I've had many, many people reach out to me and say, I no longer show my kids, even if they're not big influencers. Some have, but some are like, I don't do that anymore. And that's one at a time. One at a time. The ones that stick around and continue to do it, they know it's wrong. The world it's not hidden anymore. Everybody knows it's wrong. And so they're doing it outside the norm, and that's what matters. Our conversations, your channel, my channel, everybody's who talks about this stuff, it's important, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate you for coming on the show. Really, really, your time is very valuable, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
So there you go. Thank you so much again, Dr. Leslie, for coming on the show. What a great conversation. What she does is really important, and I feel like she does honestly feel like she wants to affect change, and she does it as she can. I mean, how much more could you get to the root of it than to get to the root of it? These guys who actually do it, she's trying to help them along, even though some of them cannot be helped. But that's a good way to do it, right? To try to change them so they can't do that again. But that doesn't mean that there's never going to be risk. There's always going to be a major amount of risk. And these people that are putting their kids on the internet to be watched by guys like this, they exist. She has talked to a lot of them. And a lot of them, and think about this, that's just a few. There's millions of them on the internet that do this and take the content from these kids and turn it into whatever they want. It's disgusting, and it should be outlawed. Kids should not be allowed on social media at all. Their image shouldn't be allowed out there, not until at least 18. That's my new thing. And I can't wait for TikTok to be banned. Get wrecked, TikTok. So that was a great interview. Very, very good information. Share this with your favorite family vlogger if you watch them. You shouldn't, but if you do, share this with them. Just be like, you should watch this because this is really important about children and predators and the stuff that you're putting on the internet. Share this one. It's a really, 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 really important. Everybody take a deep breath. Thanks for being here. And go follow Dr. Leslie on Instagram and all her socials. She's starting a podcast. It's going to be really, really cool, I think, for sure. She's a really great lady, and I appreciate her having her on. I'm sure we'll talk again, too. Thank you for being here. Thank you for amazing. Thank you for being a part of these really important conversations. You are incredible. You are valuable. And I will see you when I see you.